So I'm back from Israel. The ability to go to Israel and back in just 1 week is a miracle on so many levels. It's really pretty much difficult to fathom, for me, and I actually did it. So I'm feeling a lot of gratitude just for the ability to do the basics of what I did, which was the traveling itself. And at the same time, I'm coming back holding a lot. I was just in a country at war, which, I'm a child of the 80s. It was a pretty prosperous time when I was born, and being in a country at war is not honestly an experience that I'd ever had or I'd ever thought that I would have in my lifetime. One of the rabbis, one of the Masorti rabbis from Israel, Rabbi Idit Lev, who was coordinating this trip, in the closing event for all of the rabbis on the trip, she said, Don't talk to your congregations about your trip this Shabbat. You're still processing, you need to give it some time. And I was thinking, that might be the least realistic thing I have ever heard in my entire life. And I shared it with the office when I got back yesterday, and everyone laughed just like that. It's, I'm gonna talk about it, obviously. But also yesterday, when I was in the office, there was someone from our community who came in to drop something off and said hello to me, and he asked me a question, which was, wow, you're back, so how many communities did you visit? This is a pretty simple question. How many communities did you visit? And I found myself, I wasn't able to answer the question. I started from the beginning, and I listed all of the things that we did to the end, which was a pretty long list, but I was like, in listing off these places we've been, these people we've talked to, I've lost track of which is a community and which is not a community, And so I wrote them down to prepare to speak this morning, and the answer to the question is 10. We visited 10 communities, but I couldn't pull that answer together when I was asked yesterday. And I was grateful for that conversation to help me recognize the wisdom and the words of Rabbi Lev that I've had these experiences, but I'm still learning from them as I reflect. And I am sure that this is not the only time I will speak about this trip. I am sure that I'll be speaking about it in the weeks to come as I continue to reflect and continue to learn from that reflection. So I want to start actually at the end of the trip. Our last event was a dinner for American and Israeli conservative rabbis at a restaurant in Tel Aviv, and we were given a few questions throughout the dinner to kind of reflect and process, and the final question given by Rabbi Jacob Blumenthal, who's amazing, was said in 1 to 3 words, strict limit for rabbis, right? 1 to 3 words, describe how you feel. And there were a tremendous variety of answers shared. Togetherness, oneness, afraid, frightened, speechless, hopeful. And my answer, which I shared already with the community, my answer to this question was, I feel renewed hope. Renewed hope. I feel this renewed hope because I got to see with my own eyes that we, the Jewish people, are amazing. We are an amazing people. We are so strong, and we are not going anywhere. We will get through this. This saying, B'yachad nenatzeach, which has been on my email signature for a while now and is all over the city of Tel Aviv, means together we will prevail. And that's why I am standing here today with renewed hope. Now, at the same time, not all my colleagues felt hopeful. We spent time in a nation at war. It was clearly a nation at war. Things were not normal. On our first day there, we visited students from the Nativ program, including Diane's granddaughter, which was amazing, and from the conservative yeshiva where I studied when I was in rabbinical school. And the students in these programs, they couldn't go to Machane Yehuda all the time, the shuk. It's a place that when I was there, you could just walk there whenever you want. That was determined not always safe. There were some plans and programs that got canceled. And this makes me so sad that they couldn't go to the old city because it wasn't safe. And the old city is a place that I walked around any time I wanted to when I was there, and it was such a fulfilling experience. So the safety concerns for the students in these programs are a demonstration of how things aren't normal. Now, we also went to Kfar Aza, which was one of the, unfortunately, several kibbutzim that was attacked on October 7th. It was not an active battle zone while we were there, but it was an active battle zone not just on October 7th, but from that Saturday until the following Wednesday, from October 7th through October 11th, that the place where we were had been a war zone. 10 weeks ago, it was an active war zone. My colleagues who came away from this trip feeling frightened and speechless, that also makes sense, because we had experiences that inspired those feelings, and I think would inspire those feelings in any normal person, including me. I think a lot, actually, and thought especially during this trip about a particular blessing in our Siddur that comes right after the Baruch. We kind of miss it because it's like you say the Baruch and then it's like, are you sitting down? But this blessing is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Blessing God for making light and creating darkness, making peace and creating everything. So it turns out that this line from our tefillot is actually a modified quote from the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 7, to be exact. The quote is, Yotzer or vorei choshech. Okay, so that part's the same. God makes light and creates darkness. But here's the different line. In the original Isaiah, not in our tefillot, it's Oseh shalom uvorei ra. God makes peace and creates evil. I always think that we made that change in our tefillot because thinking about how God creates evil is a little bit much like when we're like waking up in the morning for shacharit. But that's where the sentence comes from, that God makes peace and God also makes evil. Now, it's not surprising that there is evil in the world. I think that all of us have figured this out through our own lived experience, that there unfortunately is evil in our world. But it's a whole different thing, at least in my experience, to visit a place where there has been an actual battle, to see what happens when our people are attacked and brutally killed. War is evil on a whole other level. So today I want to talk focusing on two specific experiences. One that illustrates coming away frightened and speechless from this trip, and one that illustrates coming away with renewed hope. So the first, talking a little bit more about my experience in Kfar Aza. Kfar Aza is near Sderot, which is in the south. Sderot is a big city by comparison. Kfar Aza is like a neighborhood. It's thriving, it was thriving and economically successful. They had a business, a factory that was making plastic components that had really taken off. This was a desirable place to live. There was a long waiting list. And it's also very, very near the Gaza border, so close that it can be reached on foot. And while we were there, the IDF was actively defending the area. So we heard warning blasts fired at, I don't know, I think I was taking in so much when I was there. For some reason, I didn't notice the warning blasts so much, but many of my colleagues were very startled, as one would think. And one of my colleagues observed that these blasts were going off about every 10 minutes. So I couldn't tell you, but I trust my colleague on that it sounded like a war zone. So the enemy, so let me take a step back. So we got to the kibbutz and we were met by a guide who was going to take us through and show us what happened. And so we started at a particular place where the enemy, and everyone using the word terrorists to describe the enemy because, as we know, it's unfortunately not only Hamas, there are other terror organizations as well, mostly Hamas. But we started at a particular place where terrorists had come into the kibbutz via air, on gliders in some way, and they landed there. We learned that the terrorists came into Kfar Aza in 5 different groups. Some were more strategic than others. Some came with a plan to attack in a certain way. Some might have come with a plan but did not execute any particular plan. And different neighborhoods were affected differently. So I'll just highlight 2 different neighborhoods we saw. One, they call it the young people's neighborhood. So the way that it works in the kibbutz is for people ages 18 to 30, you get like a little home of your own in a specific area. And it's when we were walking through it, even with the destruction that we saw, it reminded me of a college dorm. There was, places to sit outside, signs saying like music and beer and like love, things that you would find where young people are living. But the enemy, the terrorists, came across the border and attacked this young people's neighborhood first because they had intelligence knowing, and they knew it was a young people's neighborhood, and they assumed that the people living there were soldiers. So this neighborhood was brutally attacked and devastated. There were also neighborhoods that were attacked differently, not so much with shots and explosions, but more with abductions. Neighborhoods that were home to families. The people living in these homes were terrified or terrorized. Some of the homes were burnt and destroyed, and some of the homes, I was very surprised to learn, had actually been taken over by terrorists, and the IDF in those 5 days of battle fought the terrorists off and took the homes back. Walking through the neighborhoods, living in Los Angeles, it sort of reminded me of that, seeing fruit trees, seeing plants, seeing like evidence of obvious community. It's, my colleagues and I were walking through the neighborhood thinking like, this is the sort of neighborhood that would be nice to live in, and to witness that devastation was something that is difficult to put into words. So the community of Kfar Aza is still living as a unit, but not in the south, instead near the coast in a hotel between Tel Aviv and Haifa. There are plans to come back. That's what they're going to do, and it's going to take 2 to 3 years in order to rebuild and return. Of course, seeing this has changed my life. I'm sure I'm going to be continuing to learn from this experience as I continue to reflect on it, and I'll be teaching and speaking more about this experience as that reflection process continues. So, how is it that I came away with renewed hope? Well, we won. We won. And we're coming back. We are coming back to those homes. Also, something that I'm not sure people know about yet, because I think that many people have seen pictures of Kfar Aza. This was a home that was destroyed, and here is the home of someone where XYZ happened to that person. But what I want to make sure to tell all of you is that there were so many people visiting Kfar Aza when we were there. All of the tours were carefully timed, vehicles coming in, vehicles coming out, security this, security that, so that the word is getting out. Kfar Aza is making sure that, and the Israeli people are making sure that visitors from all around get to see and experience this personally, and the story of Kfar Aza is being told. And that also renews my hope, because as we know, with social media, with news, it's not always so favorable to us, and that's putting it very gently. But because people are having the type of experience I had, the story of this is being told. And that renews my hope, that our story is being told to the world. Another illustration of renewed hope, a different experience I had, one of the many that I'll speak about now, is the donation centers. So we've done drives gathering supplies for Israeli soldiers and for the Israeli people, and we are not the only ones. I know of so many organizations through Los Angeles, and only Los Angeles has donated so much, but of course all over the world we're mobilizing to collect these donations for soldiers. And so we went to visit a place where these are where the donations end up. And so if you are a thrifter, a thrift shop person, or you like to donate to thrift shops, or you've ever dropped off something to like NCJW or Salvation Army or something like that, you know that the donation and organization process can be pretty chaotic. It's not really an organized scene when you drop something off at a retail thrift shop around here. But what I saw at the donation center in Tel Aviv was incredibly organized. It was mind-blowing. It was taking place in a massive parking garage in a convention center. So because things are not operating as usual, the convention center isn't being used for sporting events and gatherings and things like that. So this massive parking garage became this, it's almost like Target without the advertising of food, clothing, supplies for men, women, and children. It was all completely organized and findable, so that some volunteers could come and get the shopping list or the needs list for a specific family or a specific unit, and go easily find the materials, pack them together, and send them off. And what really blew my mind about this is that this is 100% organized and staffed by volunteers. 100% organized and staffed by volunteers. These volunteers are supporting the troops and each other and supporting the Jewish people and the Jewish nation. It was a show of patriotism that was incredible to me. All of these people saw a need and worked to fulfill it. And not just worked individually, but worked together, because you can't do something like that on your own. And throughout Tel Aviv, this show of patriotism, this show of national pride, flags, banners, sayings, "Together we will prevail," seeing the whole city covered in blue and white, that brings me renewed hope. It showed me that throughout the whole country, not just Tel Aviv where it was most visible to me, but all of the places that we went, we believe in this fight. We're sending our children and our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews, our young fathers into battle. And we're doing this because we believe in this cause. And because we know at this time, these actions are necessary. So near the end of our trip, one of the things we got to do was go to Hostages Square, which is outside a museum in Tel Aviv, and people gather and remember and do a demonstration illustrating the need to bring the hostages back now. As part of this, at 5 o'clock every afternoon, every evening, rabbis in the Masorti movement do a prayer circle. Masorti rabbis are something of a novelty in Israel, if you didn't already know, but in this particular moment, Masorti rabbis are able to attract people who are secular and people who are religious, which is a unique opportunity, and to provide Jewish tradition and spiritual care and a moment of grounding to everyone who wants to partake in that and who comes to this place, Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. So when we were there, all these American rabbis, it's very exciting, and so there was extra publicity and cameras, and so we had to wear these T-shirts. Always love a good T-shirt, and it had a quote on the front from the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Kohelet, and we're all familiar with this quote: "To everything there is a season, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace." And so we were wearing these T-shirts, and eventually I'll get it out of the laundry and I'll wear it so all of you can see it. But this is not our time for peace. It just isn't. Kohelet reminds us that both war and peace are part of the human experience. And this reality, this shared experience we call the reality that is this moment, is that this is not our time for peace. And the reality is, we don't know exactly when things will change. Last week here on Shabbat, I was speaking about springing into action in a time of crisis, how the human instinct is that we spring into action first and we reflect sometime much later. And what I've really learned anew since then is that we, the people Israel and the state of Israel, we are nowhere near the stage of reflection. We are not even close. We, the people Israel, and we, the nation of Israel, we're all in that time of action, springing into action. And so I want to address the question that we've been asking since the beginning of this, which is, what can we do? What can you do? Of course, this is an ongoing conversation we've had since, not even October 8th. I think we've had this conversation since October 7th. There are many possible correct answers to the question, what can you do? And I'm so grateful to all who serve on our Israel Action Committee for continuing to suggest and publicize those actions. But today, I want to suggest two actions that are new. And I have a big ask and a small ask. So here's the big ask. And I know this isn't realistic for everyone, but the big ask is to actually go to Israel. Go there yourself. Everyone we saw, everyone we encountered, across the board, from the front desk staff at the hotel to the leaders of the communities, they thanked us so sincerely for being there, and they went out of their way to tell us how meaningful it was that we showed up for them in this time, in this chaotic time. I know there are some organized trips that are going on. I've heard about Ramah organizing some trips. I know that many of us have families and friends in Israel. And of course, there's always the potential of organizing a trip through the Adat Shalom community. And I understand that this is not a doable thing for everyone. I definitely get it. The trip that I was on was 20 people, and we had space for some more. started, and that was 100 plus people expressing interest. Only 20 people could do it. So I get that it's not possible for everyone, but I ask all of us to consider it. And so now that was the big ask. Now here's the little ask. Everyone should do this: to register to vote in the elections of the World Zionist Congress, if you have not already. This governing body allows Jews, no matter where we live, to participate in decision-making about how Jewish National Fund money is spent. So this is a big opportunity to have our voice heard. And because you are Jewish, you have a voice in this democratic process, no matter where you live, and your voice directly impacts what happens in the state of Israel. So use your voice. Now, a little explanation. We don't register as individuals, we register with a specific party. So you support the party, and then the party does the voting. Obviously, there are many parties to choose from, including one affiliated with the Masorti conservative movement, and it's called Merkaz. I encourage everyone to do their own research. I am always happy to support and learn together and answer questions. So do your research and join whatever party is right for you. We'll continue, of course, to speak and learn about this because elections are about a year away. But here at Adat Shalom, my goal for this community is 100% registration, 100% voting by the time of the next election, which is, like I said, in about a year. So if you can't show up in person, which not everyone can, and that's okay, you can show up with your vote. And there's no reason why anyone should not do this. So as I conclude, I want to come back to this feeling of renewed hope. I shared this feeling of renewed hope and coming away with this feeling a few times. And one time I received the response, oh, okay, so we're going to have peace soon, right? That's what you think? And not exactly. You know, my renewed hope comes sadly not from thinking that peace is right around the corner. My renewed hope comes from seeing the strength of our people during a time of war. Now, there's no question that peace is preferable to war. But for the people in Israel, and for, I think, people who are Jewish throughout the world who have family and friends who are serving in the IDF or, God forbid, have been taken hostage, we're focused now on protecting ourselves and our loved ones, defending our borders and defending our very homes. That's our focus. And personally, I continue to be both inspired and challenged by those in our community who want me to focus on peace, especially since I have just seen and experienced that this is not a time of peace. Lakol zman ve'et lakol chefetz tachat hashemayim. There is a season for everything. This, sadly, is our season for war. God willing, soon and in our day, we will have our season for peace. Until then, we will stand together in solidarity. And until then, may we all feel renewed hope. Shabbat Shalom.